My name is Matt, and I was a member of this club back when it first started, 2007. And a few minutes ago, Alper mentioned something about nervousness, and he asked us, as guests, if we got nervous standing up to introduce ourselves. And I would like to reassure you that I have been a member of Toastmasters for 5 years, and I still get nervous every single time I stand up to speak, even when I'm just introducing myself. I can barely remember my own first name. So that nervousness may never go away. That's okay, don't worry about it. You may get better, you will get better at speaking as you go along, but the nervousness may never go away. Don't let that bother you too much. So, like I said, I was a member of this club back in 2007. I lived in Istanbul from 2003 to 2009, and then in 2009 I left Istanbul to go back to the US, where I'm from. I was in the US for 3 years, but I missed Turkey a lot. I came here originally because my wife was from Istanbul, but we split up. And after we split up, I still missed Turkey a lot and decided that I wanted to come back and walk across the country. So that's what I would like to talk about tonight, walking across the country. The walk in total is 2,100 kilometers. I started 2 months ago. I walked from the west coast, Kuşadası. I started in Kuşadası. I'm walking east through Konya, Adana, Urfa, Diyarbakır, Van, and then I'll finish up in March or April, depending on the snow. So far, I have covered 30% of the country. I got to Konya, and then when I got to Konya on the second day of Kurban Bayram, and I was intending to spend the entire week in Konya. I was going to really get to know Konya as much as you can in a week. But at the end of 2 months of walking across the country, I was so sick of meeting people for 3 minutes at a time, which is basically what I do. I walk up to a gasoline station or to a restaurant, I buy some water or I have some lunch, I talk to people for a few minutes, and then boom, I'm on. I'm never in one place for more than 24 hours. I might roll into a village at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I meet the people. I find a place to stay in the village, or sometimes it's just a gas station. I might meet the gas station attendants and camp out at the gas station, and then the next morning, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm off again. And I really enjoy that, but I also get incredibly sick of it. And so after a couple months of doing that day after day, I crave some human contact. And I have friends here in Istanbul, and I have a history here in Istanbul. So I got to Konya, and instead of spending a week in Konya, I spent about 24 hours there. I made a phone call to some friends here in Istanbul and said, I want to come up to Istanbul. Are you going to be there this week? And they said yes, and so boom, I got on a bus and I was up here. Tomorrow, I head back south to resume the walk. I was going to go back yesterday, but then I heard about, or realized, that if I stayed an extra day, I could go to the Istanbul Toastmasters meeting and practice talking about the walk, because in about a month, for an entire week, I'll be the guest speaker at the Tarsus American College. And so for a week, I'm going to have to stand up in front of people I don't know, and I'm going to have to talk to them about the walk and answer questions about the walk. And I haven't had a chance to practice telling any stories about the walk ever. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to begin practicing. And so I delayed my departure date by a date to do that. So what I'd like to do is I will just speak about the walk for just a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes or something like that. And then I'd like to open the floor up to questions from you guys and then we'll just let your questions drive where the conversation goes about that. So while I'm talking about the walk, be thinking about what kind of questions you'd like to ask, because in a few minutes I'm going to ask you to throw me some questions. So I first got the idea for the walk about a year ago. It was September 2011, I think. And my wife and I had just split up, and I wasn't liking my job. This was back in the US. My wife and I had just split up, and I wasn't liking the job. And I just finished writing a book, and I thought, what is the next thing that I should do? I thought, well, I could get another job, which I had planned to do, but now, if I get another job, statistically speaking, I'm probably going to get bored of that job anyway after a couple of months. And then I'm going to come home to an apartment which is now going to be empty. And so I'm going to be a middle-aged guy working at a job that he doesn't really like, coming home to an empty apartment. That doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun. So maybe what I could do instead is something amazing and incredible, something I wanted to do for years and something that not a whole lot of people do. How about walk across Iran? That's what I would like to do. I'd like to walk across Iran. But then I thought, well, if I walk across Iran, and the point that I would like to make in walking across Iran is that it's not really that big a deal. Because, you know, in the US, people think that Iran is like the devil. And, you know, Iran is this terrible place where people get arrested and they spend years in jail, and they like stone women for, you know, walking down the street and driving a car and all that stuff, and it's ridiculous. And so I would like to make the point of walking across Iran showing my fellow Americans that it's really not that big a deal. But if I walked across Iran and then had problems or had to abort the trip for whatever reason, technical difficulties or physical difficulties, or if I had visa problems, got arrested or whatever, that would completely defeat the purpose of walking across the country and trying to show off that it's really not that big a deal. So I should practice. And that's how I came to this idea of walking across Turkey. I figured before I walk across Iran, I should walk across another country and practice walking across the country. So I'm kind of familiar with Turkey, and it's next door to Iran, so I'll do that. That's how I came to this walk across Turkey. I started the walk a little over 2 months ago, September 1st. And I started in Kuşadası, and I just started walking east. I got to Konya, which is 30% of the distance. After I leave Istanbul, I am going tomorrow take a bus to Adana. I have a friend from university days who's coming to Adana. We're going to walk around a little bit along the Mediterranean coast, and then he's going to leave, and then I'm going to take a bus back to Konya and resume the walk. I want to get off the central Anatolia plateau before it gets really cold. One of the main questions that people ask, after they ask why are you doing this walk, is where do you sleep? And that's kind of a big issue for me, because when I started the walk, I didn't have any idea at all where I was going to sleep. I just had faith that I would need a place to sleep, and somehow one would appear just when I needed it. I'm basically living the life of a homeless hobo. Sometimes I sleep in gasoline stations. Sometimes I sleep in the courtyard or the garden at a mosque. Sometimes I just camp out in a randomly selected grove of trees off the side of the road. I've also spent the night in an imam's apartment. I spent the night in a storage room, an empty storage room, one night. I've also spent the night at a bus maintenance yard in a small village east of Aydın. So I just kind of sleep wherever I can find a space. And actually some of my favorite places where I've spent the night have been petrol stations, gasoline stations. When I first started the walk, I had no idea that any of these places would be open to me. I didn't realize that I could even go into a moss garden. I found out on the first day that if I asked to go into a moss garden, 95% of the time, the answer will be, well, duh, of course you can go into the moss garden. I found out that if I want to camp out at a petrol station, 95% of the time, the answer will be, of course you can stay here. So I've found that finding a place to stay at night is actually one of the easiest things, one of the easiest tasks that I get to take care of on the walk. So that's the most common question that people ask me, is where do you stay at night? I also talked a little bit about why during the walk. There is no one overriding reason why I'm doing the walk. So when people ask me, why are you doing this, which is a pretty common question because not a lot of people do this, I often don't really know what to say because there is no one singular reason that possesses me to do this. It's more like a small reason that's not really inadequate, surrounded by a million layers of other reasons that just come and go. Some of the reasons that are most important to me. One is that I just want to show people that I know, family and friends, that they don't need to be as afraid of the world as they tend to be. Another reason is that when I went back to the U.S., people asked me to tell stories about life in Turkey. And after about a year of that, I realized that I was telling the same stories over and over. And if I didn't go make some new stories, one of these days I would be an 80-year-old man telling 40-year-old stories. So I better go make some new stories. That's another reason. There's also the reason that I mentioned that I'm working up the kinks. This is a practice run for walking across some other countries. The main reason, though, it's kind of like the layers of an onion. If you peel back all the layers of the onion, what's left at the center is that I like to walk and I like to see new territory. That is often not enough to justify to myself what I'm doing. So I have all these other reasons that I use at various times in combination. But that's the one that's always there. And in the morning when I wake up, sometimes it's at a gasoline station, sometimes it's at a moss garden, sometimes it's camping in a grove of trees by the side of the road. Liking to walk and liking to see new territory is the reason that sticks with me. And so that's the one that I remind myself of every morning, regardless of what the other reasons are for that particular day. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor up to questions. And since I haven't been here for a while, please stand up and remind me of your name when you ask your question. So what would you like to know? Who would like to go first? Yes.
Hi, my name is Arzu. I'd like to know if you really enjoy this experience. And if you can give us a little bit details how you feel during this journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arzu. So Arzu's question was, do you really like it and how do you feel during the journey? Is that correct? All right. I love it. Like I said, I like walking and I like seeing new territory. I love doing this. And for example, a couple weeks ago, I was walking. Are you familiar with Lake Ayer Deer? West of Coon. So I was walking there, and I was walking up the eastern shore of the lake. and it was apple harvest time. And growing up, I always lived in apple areas. So I felt like I was home, except people were speaking this language that I'm not very comfortable with. And I found myself walking through this busy apple harvest area with all these tractors running up and down the road, towing their loads of apples. And the road along that lake, there are some places where the road is up kind of high and there's a steep cliff dropping off into the lake. And there's this shoulder, it's about this wide. The guardrail, I walk facing traffic because it's safer that way. And so I found myself, it was a nice sunny day, walking through this area, eating apples until I got sick because people offer me apples all the time. And the scenery was beautiful. You know, the lake was off to the side, the sun was out, my belly was full of apples, and it was just so beautiful. And people were so nice and friendly. And I thought about my old job back in Seattle. I used to work for a kitchenware import company, getting stuff made in China, basically. And I thought about that job and compared my current experience walking along the highway with the lake and all the apples and stuff. And I thought about my old coworkers who were still back in their cubicles pushing kitchenware around the world. And I just felt so lucky to be doing something like this. So I love it. And then the second part of your question, remind me of the second part of your question.
How do you feel?
How do I feel about it? Well, like I said, I love it, but I also love waking up in the mornings and knowing where I'm going to sleep at the end of the day. And I don't get that at all on this trip. So I'm kind of nervous now because it only takes me a couple days when I pull myself out of that environment. For example, when I come here to Istanbul, I'm staying at a friend's house in Harbiye, and I wake up in the morning and I know that that night I'm going to sleep in this bed in Harbiye. I love that feeling. So on the road, after a few days, I get used to the routine of not knowing where I'm going to sleep that night. But all I have to do is remove myself from that situation for a couple of days, and I fall back into my own ways, which is loving, knowing when I wake up in the morning where I'm going to sleep that night. And so I'm kind of nervous about hitting the road again tomorrow, even though I know that after a few days in that routine, it will become familiar. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, I would like to know, all right, do you feel that the purpose, the initial purpose, as you start this journey, is fulfilled as you continue? I mean, do you feel at the bottom of your being that, okay, yes, this was something I wanted to do, and now I'm doing it, and yes, it's this, that's it, something like this. Just wondering.
That's a good question. And before I talk about it, Alper, how are we looking for time? I completely forgot to ask at the beginning.
I was just,
Yeah, how much time do we have before we start to run?
What time is it actually?
It's 8:30.
We can give a break in 15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay. So, Tuna? Do I have your name correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, another 15 minutes? Does that work okay?
Yeah, you talk for 15 minutes and I stop, and I think we have enough time for questions.
Okay. So, Arzu, your question was, is the purpose being fulfilled? Is that correct? Yes. I ask myself that every day. At the beginning of the trip, I had more grandiose purposes, things that I wanted to do. At various times in the walk, and especially in the past couple weeks, sometimes my only purpose is just to get the kilometers walked. I wake up in the morning, like for example, the last few days before I walked into Konya. I'd wake up in the morning and my first thought would be, all I have to do today is just walk the kilometers. And in my normal, I don't walk a lot. I only cover about 20 kilometers each day. So some days, that's my only purpose, get the kilometers walked. If you get the kilometers walked, you don't have to worry about anything else. Sometimes there are more grandiose plans and intentions, and now that I have reached Konya and finished a third of the walk, I'm starting to look for something more. I'm not sure what that something more will be, but I can't imagine spending another 6 months on the road, every morning just waking up thinking, just walk the kilometers. So I need something more. So most of the days, yes, the goal is being fulfilled, but the goal is also changing as time goes on. Questions from anybody else? Yes?
Hi, I'm Jem, and I'd like to know about the technical details of this phone.
Sure.
What do you carry? Do you carry heavy stuff with you?
Gone.
Do you have a GPS? Do you prefer highways or you pass through the forests? Do you keep a blog?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Good question. So Jem asked about my equipment and some of the technical details of walking on the road. And for the technical equipment, this is it right here. My backpack weighs, now it's lighter than it was at the beginning. Now it weighs about 18 kilos. At the beginning, it weighed 23 kilos. That was a little bit too heavy. I hurt my right foot. Most of the weight in my backpack is my sleeping bag, which is a very warm sleeping bag. I used to use a sleeping bag for camping on the snow, sleeping on the snow, with a very high wind in snowstorms. And so the sleeping bag is very warm. There's actually a problem when I was walking at the beginning of the walk. In September, when I was walking at the lower elevation around Iden, I would usually sleep on top of the bag because it was too warm to get inside. I have a tent, which I like to use because it keeps the animals and bugs away. And when it rains, I put the rain flap on top of the tent so the rain doesn't get in. I have a few changes of clothes, but the clothes aren't much. I have some basic toiletries, toothbrush, toothpaste, but this is, technical-wise, this is pretty much everything. I carry my laptop with me, but I only use the laptop about once a week. I only take it out of my backpack about once a week. Sometimes it's not even that, maybe a couple times a month so far. Because I don't always have a steady supply of electricity. So these are my go-to pieces of equipment. One is just a phone in a case that's larger than the phone, and the other is a camera. I take pictures of the camera, I put the pictures on the phone, I have a Turkcell data connection, upload the photos to a blog. The blog for the trip is called Heathen Pilgrim, heathenpilgrim.com. And so probably 95% of my electronic technical work is with this. The camera battery will last for a couple days, and I have a backup battery. The phone battery will only last about a day. I have a solar charger, but the solar charger takes all day to produce half of a phone charge. So I'm barely able to keep up with my phone battery demands with the solar charger. Sometimes the phone goes dead, and I accumulate pictures, but I'm unable to upload them. And also my mom panics because suddenly I drop off the face of the earth and I'm not able to even be reached by phone because my phone's dead. About the roads, you asked about the roads. I like to walk on the highways. Sometimes the highways are just simple two-lane roads, one lane this way, one lane the other way. Sometimes they are wider intercity highway or intercity freeways. 2 lanes going this way, 2 lanes going that way, lots of trucks, cars from lots of provinces, people going really fast. Sometimes the shoulder is nice and wide and comfortable. Sometimes there's even a dirt road on the side that I get to walk on. But sometimes I am walking on the road, and when traffic comes, I have to get off the road and stand on the shoulder, which may be slanted a lot. That's kind of uncomfortable, and is one of the reasons why I go so slow. I figure I'll be on the road for 8 months, and so I need to be safe during that period of time, because that's a long period of time. The chances of getting hit by a car are pretty high, and I want to avoid something like that. Other questions? Yes. Tuna?
Hello. My question is, what is the moment you got scared the most? And the second question, what does your mother think about this trip? Is she worried?
Tuna asks, what is the moment that I got scared the most, and what does my mom think? Is that correct?
Yes.
I'll address my mom question first. My mom and my dad, for my entire life, both for me and my brother, I have a younger brother, they have shown amazing restraint whenever we have gone off and done something crazy and weird and dangerous. I think that's one of the greatest gifts that a parent can give to his or her child, is just to encourage that child to go out into the world and explore. So my mom, sometimes she loses, the reins on her worry, and her worry just takes off, and all of a sudden in 10 minutes I get 6 emails saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But most of the time she's very good about it. The first question was, what was the moment that I got scared the most? I guess the moment that I got scared the most was actually before I started the walk, because then it was all just anticipation. Once I started the walk, I realized that, oh, actually this is very simple. I just walk, and I wake up in the mornings, I eat breakfast, and I walk, and then I find a place to sleep, and I go to sleep, and the next day I get up and I do the same thing over again. So the routine isn't very scary. The anticipation before the walk started was like, where am I going to sleep? What's my life going to be like? Stuff like that. Once I started the walk, a lot of those questions took care of themselves, and the ones that didn't get answered, I just became cool with the fact that they're not going to get answered, and I'll do the rest of the walk, and I'll never know what's about to happen. And in order to survive the walk, that's the main thing that I'll need to be cool with, is just relaxing with that uncertainty.
Yeah. So now, well, my question would be kind of, in Turkey, everybody in this room, we are also working in our companies, and I'm not sure everybody is happy with their work, and also we kind of have the same life like you had. It's usual, but all of a sudden you have courage to take step and hit the road. I'm watching a lot of documentaries, and I see amazing people doing also walkings to the South Pole, or going up high mountains. But I always see this happening in the Western culture. Like mostly foreigners do this.
Okay.
I haven't seen a Turk doing a walk like this, or doing something that he really likes to do. And this is passion. This is what I know the America, but this is what in States, follow your passion and go for it. It's even supported by the families, but in Turkey it's not. And what would you say about this? And what which one is the right thing? To be comfortable with our work and be unhappy, or hit the road by the courage? And how we can get this courage to hit the road? Yeah, I know. You don't need to answer all the things.
Remind me your name?
Aydın.
That's right. Okay.
Just your observation, because you also lived in Turkey a long time, and you're from States. A little bit of observation about taking a courage, about the passions we have.
My That's a very good question. My first response to it would be to debunk the idea that people in Western cultures have more of a, it's more likely that they'll go out and follow their passions. I think that that's not true. And the reason that I think that's not true is before I came to Turkey, when I was in the U.S. getting ready to come to Turkey, and I spent a year getting ready for this trip. To get ready, I walked 2,000 kilometers in the U.S. before I came to Turkey to walk another 2,000 kilometers because I wanted to make sure that my body would hold up to that and that I could carry a pack and all that. But while I was getting ready during this period of a year, I was telling friends and family and then friends of friends and people I didn't know about this trip. And out of 100 people, 60 of them would say you're crazy. But 90 of them would say, I would love to do something like that. 20 of them, maybe less, would say that I know somebody who's done something like that. One, at the most, one would say, I've done something like that. I think about the number of people who follow the trip, either by visiting the blog each day or by emailing me and asking how it's going or some other venue or asking my parents how it's going or whatever. There are about 200 people who follow the trip on a regular daily basis. And I think that of those 200 people, only one, maybe two at the most, have done something like this. There's this one guy I know, I've never met personally, he's a friend of a friend, who rode his bicycle from Florida to Alaska, which is about 7,000 kilometers. And so, out of 200 people, maybe only one has done something like this. So, when people ask me about the cultural difference and what is it in Western culture that encourages people to do this, I think that that's a bunch of BS. I think that people in Western cultures love to say, oh, you know, follow your passions, go off and, you know, do some grand adventure. But when it comes right down to it, there are very, very few people who are willing to do it. And the only reason that I was willing to do it was because I happened to have just a window in my life, you know, before I couldn't do something like this. And who knows, you know, a couple of years from now whether I'll be able to do something like this. All I know is that right now I can do something like this. And I basically had a midlife crisis. You know, my marriage fell apart, and I didn't like my job. And instead of getting hair plugs and a red sports car, I decided that I want to do something that is of value to the people around me. And most of the people that I know now, you know, they have kids, they have mortgages, they have car payments, all this stuff that, you know, they need to maintain this routine. I happen to have a window where I don't need to do that. So I owe it to these people to go out and do something like this. I owe it to these people to do something that they would like to but can't. So I think that the cultural thing, I think that's all talk, lots of intentions, very little doing. Other questions? Yes, Metin?
Yep. As you say, my name is Metin, and actually I have two questions. One of them is about the safety, and the other one is backup.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with the backup. It's actually regarding. It's actually it had a relation with the safety as well. I know some guys from France, and they started biking from France, and they went to Bilecik, which I study, after 3.5 months later. So it was really crazy, and all the way they're cycling, and while they're cycling, someday one of the guys just try to steal their camera, their stuff, and what about that safety stuff? I mean, do you have your backup, or how do you find a solution about it? And one of about the territory situation, and as you know, we have some terror problems and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about this?
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Metin. So Metin asked about safety and terrorism danger, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So for safety, faith. I depend on that a lot. I don't have a whole lot in terms of material possessions with me. And if worst came to worst, or if worst came to worst, and all of my stuff was stolen, the one thing that I would miss most is the sleeping bag, because that keeps me warm. All the other stuff, I could, you know, if it was stolen, I could let it go. And if somebody beat me up, that would be more of a problem. But I haven't, and you know, I haven't had a problem so far, and people watch out for me. One, they're very nice and very friendly, and two, they don't want somebody dying on their watch. And so when I walk through a village, I say hi to people, I stop and I talk, I get to know people, and they watch out for me. When the cops drive by me all the time on the road, I wave to them and they watch out for me. When I walk by and they're stopped at the side of the road, whether they're just filling out reports or having tea or whatever, I sit with them and I have tea with them. Truckers and dolmuş drivers are another source of safety. Just having people know that I'm in the area goes a tremendous way towards keeping me safe. About the terrorism, I don't know. I'm only in Konya so far, so I still have 70% of the walk left. But statistically speaking, again, before I mentioned faith, now I'm going to mention statistics. Statistically speaking, the chances of me having problems or being a victim of a terrorist act or something like that are extremely slim. There are people who live in that part of the country all the time, and there are tourists who go to that part of the country all the time, and the vast majority of them are perfectly fine. And so I just go on statistics and figure, well, statistics say I'm going to be okay, so I'll just take faith. Yes?
My name's Arlene. You mentioned writing before. Is this something that you plan to write a book about or something in the future?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Arlene.
Arlene. So Arlene asked, am I going to write a book about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, I figure you can't do something like this and not share it with people. So when I finish the walk, I am going to write at least one book about it. Probably a couple books about it. But I figure that you can't do something like this and just keep it to yourself. You've got to share it with people somehow.
Also, you said that people look out for you. Does that mean they know you're coming when you go walk through the villages?
I thought that they were, but they generally don't. I often find that the dolmuş drivers generally do, because we see each other all the time on the road.
But do they know who you are? Or you just explain to them what you're doing? Do they know what you're doing?
Oh, well, the thing about dolmuş drivers is that they tend to hang out in the dolmuş driver stations. And so if I walk up to a dolmuş driver station, then everybody knows who I am. But that's a vast minority of the way I spend my time. If I walk up to a tea garden or to a mosque garden or whatever, 95% of the time people have no idea what I'm doing or why. I thought that as I walk, word would kind of get along, and when I arrived in the village, people would already know that I was coming, but that hasn't been true so far at all.
And how is your Turkish for like asking if anything?
Az biliyorum. So, Kenny Marendu. So, for somebody who lived in Turkey for 6 years, it's not good at all. And plus, when I was in the U.S., I didn't use it at all. So for 3 years, I took Turkish that was not good, and I got even rustier at it. So it's good for like daily use, but a couple times I've found myself getting into political conversations, and a couple times I've found myself getting into religious conversations. Like I stayed at this one village where some people at the mosque were convinced that they needed to convert me to Islam right that very night. And because, God forbid, I was, no pun intended, I was going to be gone the next day, so it had to happen that night. And so they were trying to talk to me about religion and God and all that stuff. And it's like, whoa, I know what you're talking about, and I think about these things, but my Turkish is not good enough to have this conversation. And similar things happened with political conversations. I went into this barbershop once, and I got a haircut, and then we were sitting around having tea afterwards. And then this guy walked in, and he wanted to talk about the Greater Middle East Project. And it's like, I know what you're talking about. I understand the concept, but I can't discuss it in Turkish. And he was being a real jerk about that. Usually, people understand very quickly that, my Turkish is not very good. This guy, he seems like a nice and intelligent guy. He probably understands the subject very well, but he can't talk about it in Turkish, so we'll just talk about the weather. And that's fine. But this one guy walked in, and he really wanted to talk about the Greater Middle East Project, and he was not going to take no for an answer. And I kept telling him over and over, my Turkish is not good enough, so let's stop the conversation right now. But he just kept at it, and I ended up just getting angry and frustrated and leaving the barbershop. I got a free haircut that day. I had enough presence of mind as I was standing up angry and getting to leave. I had enough presence of mind to say to the barber, what do I owe you for the haircut? And I think he felt so sorry for me. They said, no, it's on the house, don't worry about it. So my Turkish is perfectly good for the daily use and the logistical management of day-to-day life stuff. But when it comes to talking religion and politics, it's not that good. Yes?
Hi, my name is Shelly. Sorry, I was not here from the beginning of the conversation. I have two questions, one emotional and one technical. So as far as I understood that the beginning of this journey was an emotional crisis something.
A midlife crisis, that's okay.
Yeah.
You came in the middle of this
so the first
speech.
question is, are you over that suffering emotions?
Okay, that's the first question.
And are you planning to go back to that settled life? I mean, after you open this new window for yourself, do you think once again you will go back and find yourself in that settled life? This is the emotional part.
Okay.
And the technical question is, what shoes you wear? What kind of shoes you wear?
All right, and you said your name is Celine?
Shelly.
Shailene?
Shelly.
Shelley?
Like S-H-E-L-L-Y.
Okay, Shelley. Okay, all right, excellent. And by the way, I see red on the clock, so am I running out of time? Okay, so I'll just answer this last question, and then I think we have a break, right? Okay. So Shelley asked, basically, is your midlife crisis over? and then I'm sorry, I got so distracted by that. What was the second part of your question? Shoes, okay. The shoes are easier, so I'll answer those now. I'll answer that question now. I use these shoes.
Brand name, please. Brand name.
Pardon me?
Brand name.
Oh, Merrill. They're Merrills.
Same.
Oh, really? Are you also wearing Merrills?
Yeah, right now.
Yes, I wear Merrills. In the 2,000 kilometers before I came to Turkey, I ran through 2 pairs. The first pair lasted, let's see, 1,300 kilometers, And then I started carrying a pack, and I carried the pack for the last 700 kilometers of the walk. And in those 700 kilometers, I wore through a second pair of shoes. So I figured that in this walk, I'll probably go through 2.5 pairs of shoes. I want to make these last for another month, and then I'll switch to the second pair of shoes that I brought. While I was practicing for the walk, I tried some fancier and more expensive shoes, some shoes that I used to really like when I was snow camping back some years ago in Seattle. But they did not work well at all for walking. I like shoes with minimal support. I don't do this in Turkey because the road conditions aren't right, but when I was practicing before I came to Turkey, each day I would walk a couple kilometers barefoot and to build up the muscles down there. And so shoes that don't have as much support, I love. Shoes that have a lot of support don't work well for me at all for this application. So Merrell's is the short answer. And the cheap Merrell's, I take all the stuff out inside, you know, the insoles and stuff, I take all that out and just walk on the bare. After a while, the shoes start to smell kind of bad, which, you know, when I'm by myself out in the middle of nowhere, that's okay, because I'm the only one who has to deal with that. But when I came here to Istanbul, none of my clothes had seen a washing machine for a couple months. I washed things by hand whenever there was running water, but they hadn't seen a washing machine for a couple months, so inside of my backpack, it smelled like a dead animal was in there. My shoes, even after a week of me not wearing my shoes, and them sitting out on the balcony and getting aired out 24 hours a day, they still stink like a dead animal. And so I just tell myself, okay, another month in these shoes, and which I'm only wearing the shoes tonight because it was raining. Most of the week I've been wearing my sandals. But I just remind myself that these have to last a month, and then I never have to see them again. So that was the shoe question. The other part of your question was the midlife crisis, and how are you doing on that? I don't know. I don't know. I could spend 2 hours answering that question, but I won't.
Okay.
I'll try to give a concise answer. I really like what I'm doing, and the things that I did before were not like this at all. But the things that I did before led up to that midlife crisis. So I don't want to do those things. I want to do something different. This is that something different. And I love what I'm doing now. Just walking and basically being a homeless person with technology. And after the trip, I will write a couple books about it. But I don't want to go back to the life that I had before, because that wasn't working for me. I don't know if I want to continue this one, though. And maybe that answer will come to me at some point. There is a big part of me that says, for years, for decades, all of my life, has said, I want to have a family. And this is not conducive to that at all. So at some point, I'm going to have to, answer that question of, what I'm doing now. It's not compatible at all with wanting to have a family. But I don't know what the answer to that's going to be. I'm just kind of going on faith that it'll occur to me at some point.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.